Welcome to Mental Makeover Radio, your go-to destination for meaningful conversations about mental health. I'm your host and your trusted therapist bestie, Cecilia Manella. Join us as we explore the complexities and messiness of human experience by addressing your questions and concerns. I'm here to provide a straightforward and practical therapy advice. So grab your favorite beverage, whether it's tea, coffee, or whatever tickles your taste buds, and get ready to embark on a mental makeover. Have you ever wondered what the difference between stress and burnout actually really is? We use these words very interchangeably, and I think that we need to know the difference between burnout and stress. So today's episode is all about talking about stress and burnout and what the difference is and how they might be just a little bit similar. Stress is really a normal thing we experience. We experience it every single day, and through periods of our lives, it's either higher or lower. But the truth is that we experience it every single day. And, it can be overwhelming at times. It can be hard to figure out what's actually causing the stress. And then we have this thing we call burnout. And burnout is stress on steroids. It's when we've reached the limit. It's when stress is compounded over time, usually years and years, and takes an effect on our mental health, but also our physical health and well-being. So it's this all-encompassing thing. So I'm going to dive into the differences of it because the way we approach these things might be a little bit different. And I want to leave you with a really clear plan for your life that you can do every single day or every single week to prevent you from getting to burnout. One of my most favorite quotes that comes from burnout is from Adam Grant. Now, if you haven't had the opportunity and pleasure of listening to Adam Grant or reading Adam Grant, I highly suggest you do that. He is an organizational and social psychologist from the US, and he has written a ton of books. His podcast is really great. You can follow him on Instagram. You can follow him on LinkedIn. You can follow him pretty much everywhere. And Adam Grant has written a lot about emotional functioning and how it works in organizations. But what I love what he says about burnout is that the heart of burnout is emotional exhaustion. It's this feeling of feeling so depleted and drained by your job or demands that you have nothing left to give. It doesn't just hurt our productivity, it can harm our mental and physical health as well. There's so much evidence linking burnout to weakened immune systems and even cardiovascular disease. It's no wonder that burnout has been declared an occupational syndrome by the World Health Organization. So when we're talking about burnout, we're talking about very grave consequences when we're not taking care of ourselves. And burnout can happen in our jobs. So it can happen from the work that we do, but it also can happen a lot with parenting. We can get burnt out by parenting or caregiving, or if you have a child with disabilities, or if you have parents who are aging, who are ill, or a spouse who is ill. There's this constant demand on you. So I want you to think about burnout as a complex consequence of too much stress. So let's talk about the difference between stress and burnout. Okay, so imagine there's two different columns here, and one side is stress and one side is burnout. What's on the stress side is you put too much effort into something. So there's an over engagement of energy, let's say, into something. You feel emotions really, really strongly. So there's, I call it being crispy fried, or sometimes just feeling like your nerves are exposed, like there's nothing really protecting you, so that you feel emotions really strongly. Stress can also make us feel hyperactive and anxious. So what that means is this energy that's over engaging into something. So we're hyperactively involved in things, and there's kind of this like hum of anxiety. So that anxiety that is not connected to a specific situation, but it's just kind of always there. It's just below the surface, and it doesn't take very much for it to get activated or for you to feel this kind of vibration of anxiety in your body. So that anxiety can be, loss of focus. It can be inability to sleep. It can be really reactive with emotions. However you experience anxiety, because everyone experiences it just a little bit differently, it's this experience of this humming that exists kind of below the surface. With that, with stress comes, a drop in energy where we have less energy to give. So that means our capacity has been impacted and we don't feel like we have enough to give back into our lives, into our work, into our relationships, into parenting, into friendships, into anything. We notice a significant drop in energy. The thing about stress is that you can still be productive, but you have to really focus. So it takes a lot of energy to get back into the focus when it comes to productivity. Stress also takes a physical toll. So we see things like headaches, neck and back pain, shoulder pain. We see like eye strain pain, or your teeth are clenching at night. So you get the grinding that happens with your teeth, your beautiful teeth. Physical things also can be like, we don't talk very much about this, but like leg pain, ankle pain, cold hands, cold feet, all these things can be related to stress. Also, stomach issues. Your gastrointestinal system is highly impacted by stress. So, loss of appetite, having too much appetite, maybe having a little bit too much gas, those things are really affected by stress. And the thing about stress is that the difference between stress and burnout is that the fatigue with stress can be changed with rest. And so rest and restoration is really important with stress. So taking your vacation time, making sure you're taking time off, making sure you're not working overtime, these kind of blocks of rest can help the fatigue and you can kind of rebound. So there's a bounce back that comes with stress. Okay. So when you think like stress is normal, we all experience it, and there's a bounciness to it with rest and restoration. So that's on one column. And then on the other column, when we're talking about burnout, it's like compounded stress over time. So we're taking the symptoms of stress and we're making them much bigger and more pronounced. So in burnout, it becomes difficult to put in any effort. So where stress, you put in too much effort, and burnout, it's difficult to put in any effort. This idea of putting in effort feels daunting and just impossible. Your emotions can feel really blunted. And so what that means is that then in relationships just shows up as emotional distance. So it's kind of like, everything is just kind of like, I've had to describe to me like you're just in water and you can hear people talking, but it's just everything's very blunted. Like it doesn't quite hit you. And you're a little bit disconnected, as in maybe you're not really feeling in your body. Maybe you feel like you're not really present in your life, or your mind wanders really easily. So, but it's a constant feeling of an emotional bluntedness. Okay. This isn't something that comes and goes. Burnout, it doesn't come and go. Burnout is a place you arrive to after compounded stress. You feel drained and really helpless. And this is kind of where symptoms of depression really live. So where stress kind of gives us this anxious energy, burnout is much of a heavier energy, and it's a slower thing. So it feels a little bit more like depression. You have really limited motivation for anything besides the basic needs potentially. And sometimes even basic needs are really difficult. So taking a shower, getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, these things are really, really difficult. In burnout, you work really hard with very little productivity. So that's kind of the difference too between stress and burnout, is that in stress, we can be productive with focus, but in burnout, you feel like you're spinning your tires and you're working really freaking hard and you've got no productivity at the end of the day. This takes a massive emotional toll on your body and on your mind. And the thing about burnout is that it persists, the fatigue persists, that rest doesn't have an effect on. So you can take that lovely week in Mexico, or you can go up to a cabin, or take a time off, or making sure you're not working overtime and you're taking your breaks, and there's just no break from that sense of fatigue that exists kind of deep in yourself. So burnout is stress compounded over time. So we want to make sure we're using these words appropriately, because when you say, oh my gosh, I've been so burnt out, I need a weekend of nothing, and you recover, that's actually not burnout, that's actually stress. And the words we use to describe our experiences are really, really important, because the words we use, our brain picks up on them. So how we tell our story, how we explain our experiences has an impact on how we perceive that experience, how we experience that in our mind, but also like how we're having that inside of our body. So it's really important to tell the difference with stress and burnout. Now, I want to share with you 4 key things around reducing your probability of ending up in burnout. Because the thing about burnout is that once you're there, you don't get to just get out of it. Research shows usually when someone goes off of work due to burnout, and we used to call this stress leave. Now we call it, like, there's a mental health aspect to it. When you're off of work for burnout, research shows that the recovery rate and time for burnout is at minimum 18 months and more likely about 24 months. We're talking about 2 years to recover from full-blown burnout. And I've worked with many people in burnout, and it is a very slow process to get to that healing place of feeling capable of taking on life again, capable of doing the work that you want to do. And what it comes down to is that it's been years, if not decades, let's say, of giving without boundaries, or being in jobs that are really high demanding, or in roles that are really, really demanding with not a lot of rest. So the stress is compounded over time. Burnout doesn't happen in a day, doesn't happen in a week. It happens over progression over years. And I want you and anyone you want to share this with to know that there's ways to reduce it. So there's really 4 key pieces around focusing on reducing the probability of burnout. And the first one is thinking about demand. I want you to think about your life and what is in demand of your time, of your attention, of your energy. And what we want to do is reduce some of those demands. A structural change can reduce the load on you. And what does that mean? It can be, reducing digital demands. It can mean reducing the number of appointments and meetings and projects that you're part of. It can mean reducing the amount of outings you have or personal demands on your time and relationships. You just have to think about your life and take audit of all the demands are there, because we're so used to adding more. It's kind of like Amazon shopping or anything, just add to cart. We just quickly add to cart without really thinking. And we just let it sit in our cart. And I know you all do it because I do it. I add it to my cart, let it sit there. And when we do this in our personal lives, we just add to cart, or adding things on our plate and increasing demands. We don't often stop to take stock of it. Like, how much is actually on your plate? How much you're constantly hustling towards these demands. We've never really renegotiated them. All we do is add more to our plates. So I want you to really think about the demands in your life. And if you write this out, it's even better. If you just kind of map it out a little bit about all your demands. If you spend a week just auditing this, I think you might be surprised by how much is actually on your plate. And then really thinking about what can come off of it for a period of time or maybe forever. It's just choosing to reduce the demand in your life. So what comes with that is the second thing is control. So this is really about having the freedom and, the skills that you need to handle the demands of your life, demands of your job. So it's really important to think about, what do I have control over? What do I not have control over? And in these spaces where I have control over the demands or my times or commitments, is that fulfilling? Is it where I'm using my skills to the best of my ability? Is it, where do I feel a lot of freedom in this commitment that I'm doing? Or do I feel like I've been pushed into this commitment, or I committed to it and I felt like I had some freedom, but now it feels really different. So again, this is really about taking stock again and thinking about control. The truth is, we're humans. We just love control. We're obsessed about control. So you need to take some of that back and look at what's on your plate and realize that you actually have control over what's on there, and you have control to take off anything that you don't want on there. The third thing is really important, is about increasing supports. The truth is, we just simply need more supports in our life to feel functional. One of the biggest consequences of the pandemic is that our support systems have shrunk or disappeared. And we were much more socially connected. And cultural norms really tell us that asking for help is a sign of weakness. but we are social beings. I mean, we're just humans. We're meant to live in tribes. We're meant to live in connection. We are meant to be reliant on each other because you can't possibly have all the skills to do everything all the time. There are people in your life who have skills in different areas that you don't have. There are people in your life that want to show up for you, but that you're not letting them because they don't know how to. Sometimes that's reaching out. This is having conversations. This is about allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to ask for help and accept the help that's given to you. So we want to increase supports as much as possible. So think about this in your personal life. Think about this at work. Think about in every single role that you play that it requires a lot of support. And the fourth thing that's really important is naming emotions. So when you name your exhaustion, it becomes easier to see that it's not really a problem in your head. It's not something you're creating, let's say, but it's situationally based. And it can also help pinpoint where it rises and where it falls, because exhaustion isn't at 10 out of 10 all the time. It does ebb and flow and it moves. Emotions do move. They're like water, kind of like comes and goes, and there's a flow to them. And until we name it, and we name it appropriately, we can't really see it. And then in naming that emotion, we realize it's actually situational. It has something to do with the situation we find ourselves in, a relationship that we find ourselves in. But it's really important to name those emotions. Now, we're terrible at naming emotions. And so if you need some help, you can quickly go to Google and let me tell you, I'll give you a cheat sheet on all the emotions. And I think it's important to really dive into that piece of it. And the underarching thing that comes with burnout and stress, and I've talked about this before. So if you want to spend some time listening to my argument around moving away from time management and moving more towards attention management or allocation of time, you can listen to episode 31, where I talked about going from busy to purposeful around time. And because time management focuses really much on productivity, and we're looking at efficiency, right? And we are not really focused on attention management or time allocation. And so we want to move towards is, what grabs your attention and what is the why? Why is that task important? Why is this role really important? It really helps you to connect to intrinsic values of that goal, of that task, of that role, or the values in your life. Because we can move towards a value-driven life, which is a lot better than being co-opted by shiny objects, right? So you got to remember, our creativity is fueled by lowering our attention and by allowing ourselves to be bored, by allowing ourselves to just sit and not constantly have everything be productive. So it's moving away from productivity and more towards creativity, which requires you to be more intentional with your time. And if you want to learn more about values, and I highly encourage you to dive deep into a values exercise that I freely give to you, and you can download that at ceciliamanella.com/values. I'll walk you through an exercise where you can discover your values, and you can use those values to customize your life and customize your wellness plan, because we often talk about wellness plans and they feel really airy-fairy. It's like, oh, take a bath as part of self-care, or make sure that, you get a pedicure or manicure, or you go golfing. Okay, those are great activities, but if they don't connect to your values, then they're not really part of self-care. So in order to create a plan, and I want you to think about a plan around preventing burnout, is starting off with strengths, which is, what tools am I using that are working? And what are ways to maximize these tools? So these can be like coping tools. They can be digital tools you use for work. It can be manual tools that you use, like a day timer or anything you write down, or a notebook or journaling. I want you to think about what's actually working and why it works and how to maximize that. And on the flip side of that, which is the second part, is what's not working. What am I doing that is no longer working? And why isn't it working? So without shooting all over yourself, like this should be working, but it's not, or, getting mad at yourself that something is not working anymore, It's more about like, why is that not working? And why am I doing it if it doesn't actually work? We often don't adjust our plan based on the stress levels of our life or we find ourselves in our lives. We just use the same thing over and over and over again. And we don't often ask ourselves, does this actually still work? And if it doesn't, I need to figure out something else. What comes with that is also, what boundaries do I potentially need to set? Because this is a hard one. And I've talked a lot about boundaries on the podcast. There are several episodes around boundaries. And you can also download a workbook, ceciliamanella.com/boundaries, and it will help you figure out what you need for boundaries in your life. The third part about creating a plan is about opportunities. So this is about lifting our head up. We get so busy and hustle, right? We get so busy in all the things we're doing. It's almost like our head goes down. It's like staring at a screen. We need to look up and see, what are some activities I haven't tried yet? Or what are some things I've always wanted to do but haven't done? And what do I need to do right now? What are my needs right now? Not, a week from now or 5 weeks from now or a year from now. What are some of the things I can do right in this moment? Having new experiences and laughing and feeling a little bit lighter is the greatest way to combat stress. It is the greatest way because so many magical things happen when we experience joy and happiness and laughter and we're authentic about it. So many beautiful things happen. I want you to create space for that, make a plan for that, be intentional about that. But this only comes if you start to take some things off your plate that are demanding of your time. The fourth part of a plan is about integrating and connecting. So what forms of self-care do I need to integrate into my life right now? How are my relationships, my connections doing? Who can I connect with for more like support and love and connection? And who do I need to stop connecting with? That's a really big one around, all the relationships in my life filling my bucket? And maybe not all of them are filling your bucket right now because maybe there's circumstances that prevent them. So if somebody's ill or our partners aren't in a good place or they're really struggling, and that's totally fine. But I think we need to audit our relationships. And instead of assuming that they're supportive because they've been there for a long time, we need to really think about the quality of those relationships and that we've all evolved and sometimes we grow apart. And sometimes some friendships or relationships or commitments or projects or groups that we're part of no longer serve us. And this isn't a self-centered thing or a selfish thing. This is like, maybe it's recognizing that your life has evolved and you're in a different place and you have skills and abilities to maybe contribute at a higher level or in a different way. And so when we stay stuck in some of these places, it actually limits our life and makes us smaller, which can be actually really stressful. And we want to be able to expand. We want to allow ourselves to be bigger and more open and more ready to accept opportunities, love, and support that come our way. This is how we work through creating a self-care plan that works, a plan that actually addresses stress and helps to prevent some burnout. Now, if you're feeling burnt out, really the best way through it is to do some therapy, to do some work, because having someone to talk to you and walk you through this process is so valuable. It's really hard to see the forest and the trees. It's really hard to see your way out of something when you don't really even know how you got in it. It's really difficult. Reach out, talk to someone, even talk to a friend, share with them that you're feeling a little bit burnt out. Share with them the stress, the compounding pieces. Loneliness and isolation are the predictors of burnout. Do not do this isolated. You deserve better. You deserve to be in connection. If you know someone in your life who would benefit from this episode, please share it with them. I really hope that it helps you see the difference between stress and burnout and potentially helps people in your life see the difference between stress and burnout. And you can move towards creating a plan that is meaningful just for you. Really glad that you tuned in today. Thank you so much for being part of the Mental Makeover community. Until next week, be bold, be brave, be well.